Low power is everything about the future of electronics. Just everything that you try to do have to be low power.
Hi, it's Eamon here at IP Exchange. We're going through our coverage of CES, and this one is particularly special. If you've been following us for a while, you may remember we did an IP experience with Scott from Ambiq.
If you had told me 10 years ago, when I was in the early years of the company, that we were going to have a GPU that could run at high speed, that we were going to have a processor that can run up to 200 megahertz, I'd say no, there's no way you could fit all that into a tiny power budget like we're talking about here. But between Moore's law and between the innovations that we've made at Ambiq, that's all possible.
That was all about low power technology, particularly for MCUs. Their spot technology is incredible, using the threshold voltage of the transistor rather than the kind of full on voltage to be the basis of the digital processing. We've got this board here, which was featured in that interview, but this time we're talking with Fumi, which is the CEO of Ambiq. And in a show where there's so much talk about AI, this is just an incredible discussion on what Ambiq really brings to the table in terms of low power and where low power devices really sit in that world where we kind of want AI in everything now. So enjoy this this discussion between Guy and Fumi.
Fumi, we're here to chat.
Okay, great.
You're the CEO of Ambiq. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about low power and what that means to you.
And again, low power is everything about the future of electronics, right? And just everything that you try to do have to be low power. And year after year, demand for low power product is going to be growing.
Right.
And it's going to be a phenomenal market for the low power.
So what do you see the challenges as being in terms of MCUs, your customers? Who do you see as being your primary target for where that low power is going to be applied and the problems that they're going to have to solve moving forward in the future? Let's just say in the next, there's no point thinking 5 years ahead because no one can see 5 years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're lucky, we can see 2 years ahead. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a product roadmap that says, I need to be able to support low power.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you see your potential customer base growing, and where are they going to be using your computing power in that low power environment?
Right. Again, wearables, the watches were our main customer and the market in the past.
Yep.
And I think it will grow, but also all those product that uses anything to do with battery operated product is going to be growing next 2 years because of market expectation is growing, right?
Right.
It's like 8 years ago when I started. Smartwatch lasting only a few hours, even a day.
Yep.
Customer used to tell me that was good enough. Today, most of the customers expect two weeks, if it's not longer.
Yep.
And I think it's gonna happen with almost anything to do with electronics with a battery operated product.
Okay.
It's gonna require all the longest battery life that they can get.
Yeah. So what's the relationship then between an MCU company like you
Mm-hmm.
and the battery manufacturers? How does that relationship work? Because obviously there has to be a mutual understanding. You know, if I'm a wearable manufacturer, I'm going to be asking you've just explained expectations could be 2 weeks for a battery. Your customers are running your MCU, doing all sorts of complicated software, all sorts of complicated analytics. That's burning power. You're the specialist in low power.
Mm-hmm.
There must be a relationship between you and the battery manufacturer.
Well, again, it goes hand in hand, right?
Yep.
They continue to improve their battery life as well as the form factor. It's getting smaller, thinner, and we support that kind of small battery with longer, lasting MCU with low power. So it's really going hand in hand. Their evolution on a new battery year after year will help us and will help them.
Right. So do you have an innate relationship with the battery manufacturers where you're developing together, or do you do it in isolation and learn from one another?
I think we just respect each other, but we just don't work together in the way that you expect. But
Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it's just we just go along with what they do. I mean, used to be like coin batteries, like used to be that typical battery,
Yeah.
right? It's like, like film battery is becoming like a trend.
Yeah.
The thinner,
Yeah.
smaller.
But the reason why I ask you that question is if I'm an embedded engineer and I'm trying to understand how I do my next generation wearables,
Mhm.
your answer to that question is they're almost entirely reliant on you.
No, I think they rely on also the battery technology to advancement as well, right?
Right. Okay. But that happens independently.
It does happen
Yeah,
independently.
that's
Right.
right. Okay.
Mhm.
So how are you going to in the next 18 months? What's going to be your definition of low power?
Well, again, we just continue to make the power consumption as low as possible.
Right.
Next 18 months, we will have the next generation product introduced, and that's like much lower than the previous generation.
Right. And is that and how do you do that? Are you doing that through more efficient software, or are you doing it using different technologies?
Well, again, spot technology, sub-threshold power optimization technology is fundamental, right? But we do from all the angle from software, as well as architecture of our product, as well as going to the new M55 core. So we'll do a lot, everything we can do to make a lowest power possible.
Right. And then in terms of applications, you talked about watches, you talk about wearables. Where else do you see your MCUs going, and where else do you see potential for your market to grow?
Again, we have a go-wide project that are going on right now.
Yeah.
And medical devices definitely is becoming connected, and it's going to go needing more battery life. So I think with medical devices as well as, like eventually industrial and automotive as well.
In terms of, let's say, industrial and automotive,
Hmm.
where, at the moment, EVs, you don't see, the uses of battery is all about, how far the car goes, but you're saying you can bring benefit to EVs at the same time?
Of course, again, all the EVs, they want to use their battery for running the motors. Okay, they don't want to spend battery juice for running sensors, anything else besides distance.
Yeah.
So the less you use electricity in running, like even sensing,
Yes.
audio, anything,
Yes.
the less you do,
Yes.
the longer the EV can
Right.
drive.
So when you're talking about that, you're talking about the relationship that you have with all the sensors.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at, let's say, automotive moving forward or medical, what you're actually describing there is the efficient use of power wherever there is any sensor data moving from the edge and beyond the edge. Because I've just been having a discussion with one of your team about
Right.
AI.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So what you're talking there is the efficient use of power at any point that you're taking in data.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very interesting, isn't it? Because if you actually think about if you think about MCUs at the moment, yes, they're worried about power, but they're not necessarily worrying about it as a low power. But you're describing a vision where wherever there's data, it's going to be power sensitive.
Right. It's really everything is like when you gather all the powers that are being used on any applications, it piles up. And expectation in the market is really, like I said, is growing to be longer battery life. Oh, I mean, people just don't like plugging in
No.
and charging.
Yeah.
I mean, I I had a I have watches that last almost 3-4 weeks. you don't have to worry about, like your business trip
No. So
carrying around chargers.
So in terms of you being a CEO,
Mhm.
you trying to understand what the future of the market is. What you're actually describing is a scenario. I think what you're describing is a scenario where every time you are sucking in a piece of data, you are using battery. Everything is battery sensitive. So you need the most efficient MCU that's
Right.
going to take in that data as efficiently as it possibly can
Mhm.
and not use up battery.
Right.
That is
That's
in
yeah.
summary,
Mhm.
that is at the absolute beating heart of your business.
Exactly. That's our business. We're not developing something really new in the semiconductor world, but we're making everything power efficient.
Yes.
So our focus is not like, developing some kind of new functionality of semiconductor or sensors.
No.
We will make it so power efficient to the point that it's really differentiated.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that's an extraordinarily good summary to understand what Ambiq's vision is,
Right.
and where you're taking where you're taking the business. To understand that your heritage is all about wearables. Your heritage is understanding how to make those things last as long as possible.
Uh-huh.
But they're not plugged in. So where else can you take that heritage? Because it's where everybody else is trying to understand, where you take sensor data, do it in, if you like, a whole macro scale,
Mhm.
because a whole system, wherever it is, whether it be a car or be a medical system, as far as you're concerned, is just going to be increasingly power sensitive, and you're going to be right in the
Exactly. I think that I'm sure that you talk to some of my members, AI at the endpoint is going to be a part of like day-to-day life.
Yes.
Okay. And when you have something like myself, English as a second language, let's put it this way, and you expect simultaneous translation
Yeah.
out of your watches or your earbud,
Yeah.
it cannot last only 5 minutes.
No.
It needs to last an hour at least.
Yeah.
And that will be enabled by Ambiq, definitely because of our power efficiency. And more we advance in AI,
Yeah.
my product will allow this kind of devices to understand my accent English
Yeah.
as a recognition.
We started this conversation where you talked about being at the heart of you being at the heart of everything to do with low power. So you naturally talk about wearables
Mhm.
because you don't want to plug them in.
Right.
So then you moved on to say what that actually means is, if you take medical, where you're taking in data all the time, or in a car where there are thousands of sensors taking in data all the time, the whole of the battery life
Right.
is going to be very, very important.
Mhm.
So you talked about how using your everything that you've learned from a heritage point of view, from a wearable, that's taught you how every single piece of data that comes in has got to be used efficiently and in a low power.
Mhm.
So let's just develop that conversation a little bit, because what you've then moved on to talk about is this world of AI,
Mhm.
which everybody is talking about,
Right.
and which, from what I can understand, nobody really understands, or at least has their own interpretation of what AI is.
Mhm.
But you just said something very, very interesting there, which is interesting to me, is that for every bit of code that AI is running,
Mhm.
and every bit of complexity it is running,
Mhm.
and every time it takes it takes in data, and it's analyzing data,
Mhm.
and the more complex it gets, the more power it is going to use.
Right.
So therefore, that becomes you're then not talking about a device just taking in data
Mhm.
to not use power. You're actually describing where power becomes an absolute resource for the software that's running on AI, which, if you like, is the complete opposite of where we started.
Mhm. Right.
We've gone full circle,
Uh-huh.
because all of a sudden it's the application that's burning,
Right.
as opposed to the data that's coming in.
Data coming in, right? Exactly. Now we're talking about
So we're talking about then something different. We're talking about a different environment. So tell me a little bit, just before we finish,
right?
Just tell me a little bit about how you see. Let's not worry about AI and robots and taking over the world, but we know that AI is going to be absolutely key to driving applications, and if it's plugged in, that's fine. But most AI is not going to be plugged in.
Right.
So tell me, as a CEO, 18 months ago, you might have been thinking about AI, but it probably wasn't in your top three agenda.
You're correct. I mean, we talked about AI.
The
entire market was talking about AI.
Yeah.
Everybody was really putting like .ai, but what is it?
Because you should. Not necessarily because it meant anything.
Right.
But now we've got a situation where if you don't solve it, they have a problem.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about.
Right.
So how do you deal? Because all of a sudden your obsession with that wearable has got to last for 12 hours, 3 weeks. So I've got to be efficient with taking in data. You're not running code all the time continuously in order to do that. But if you're talking about an AI device, all of a sudden you're talking about a device that's intuitively running data that you've never had to deal with before.
Right.
So how do you are you going to use heritage technology, or you're going to have to reinvent how you do low power at that point?
It's a heritage technology that allow us to have NPU and all those new kind of technology with lowest power possible, and allow us to do, for example, like not storing data, but inferencing.
Yeah.
So it does do a lot of calculation, a lot of understanding what's needs to be done.
Yeah.
And that will be done with the most power efficient way.
Yeah. So in a purely commercial way of looking at it, we have a world now that all of a sudden is embracing AI, and none of us know what the future will be in 5 years' time with how AI changes the world. None of us can be sure of that, apart from the fact that we know that it's going to exist. We also know that it's going to involve thousands and thousands of lines of code that is burning data at a pace that would not have been an expectation. So is your message as a CEO to anybody who's going into that environment, you need to be very, very careful and understand who your partner is regarding how you're going to compute that and manage it, because power is going to be imperative. So if I were you, I'd come and talk to somebody who really understands and has really understood wearables, because I know more about it than anybody else.
Yeah, but again, I want to be very, very careful. I think that a lot of people has a lot of ideas. So you mentioned like, well, we're not going to know 2 years, 3 years down in the line what the AI is going to be.
No, we're not.
There's a lot of people who has a lot of ideas, and we interact with those customers or the partners, and I see that a lot of things around your body will allow you to do something that I cannot do today. For example, some of the partners are looking at I'll be able to tell you who you're talking to. Okay. So when you met somebody before, so like if I see you like 2 years from now on the street,
I'm sure you'd have forgotten me, but anyway, there you go.
That's what you think that it forgot you, right? But AI glass may recognize.
Yeah.
Hey, you know that guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's something similar. It's like sometimes you're talking to somebody, and I know who was it. Maybe 2 years, 3 years from now, you don't have to ask that on your yourself. It made just the
It's just going to intuitively say,
exact
this is the person that
Right.
that we met,
right,
and I understand
right.
the pace of their beating heart, for goodness sake. I don't know, whatever.
And again, so it's like simultaneous translation does exist already with these phones and everything,
Yeah,
but it doesn't learn my accent. It doesn't learn some of the Japanese accent versus Chinese accent versus Mexican Spanish accent. They will learn, but it needs to be on your devices.
yeah. So you are describing. So
I am the one that
yeah,
my device can understand,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So that's all the things. But so therefore, you are. I mean, let's be honest. The phone, is that a wearable? Phone is a wearable, isn't it?
Well,
It essentially is.
it is, but it's just it's not convenient. You cannot just pull out.
No,
like
no, no,
this,
no,
right?
no. But the point that I'm making is that what you're describing is that your AI in that environment, let's say just for translation
Mm.
or recognition or voice recognition,
Mhm.
is going to be sitting on the device using AI.
Right.
But actually, that's the same environment that a wearable is today or was 18 months ago.
Mhm.
It's just running a whole different complexity of code.
Exactly. Right.
Right. Okay.
And one other challenge for this future that Ambiq will be able to solve is that this AI at endpoint that we talk about a lot. I think capability of translation, those technologies here already. Okay, it just how to make it smaller and be able to use that on the wearable devices. One thing that really, really we value is privacy and security. You may have certain information on your AI devices around you. It has to be really, really on your own data, not shared with somebody else. And how you do that, that means really your computation or your inference have to happen here instead of connecting to the data set,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how do you do that? You have to have a really most power efficient way of inferencing.
Yeah, because every time you add a layer of security, you're then adding more code, more power.
Exactly.
Right. So this whole AI world has opened up for you a whole new raft of potential customers.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
completely new.
Completely new, and it's exponentially
Yeah.
growing. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with caveat that it have to be secured, secured and privacy protected.
Right.
Without that, I'm sure that people is going to start going away from AI at end devices.
Absolutely.
You want to know where you are, but you don't want somebody else to know where you are.
Absolutely.
All those things are going to be very important.
Yeah.
And you don't want people to share knows that what question you're asking or your device is tracking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought this discussion was drawing to an end, so we will draw it to an end. But
Mm-hmm.
what you've described there is we all know that the potential paranoia of AI and the data that it's keeping and what it might mean. What you're describing is that actually, regarding things like wearables, so long as it is safe and secure and not connected to the cloud,
Mm-hmm.
which means that it truly is a wearable,
Right.
then people are going to be a lot more comfortable to allow that kind of data to be kept on a discrete device.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way that's going to work if it runs out of power after 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And that's your future.
Exactly. I believe that that's what Ambiq's strengths is going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we believe that our company has a growth potential that really exponential.
Absolutely. Really good discussion.
Same here.
Thank
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I did. So obviously I wasn't at CES, but I did get to watch it from after seeing a lot of other videos, which we haven't released yet, about AI. And this really puts a lot of things into context, especially these ideas that we want AI everywhere, but we want it to last. So when you're thinking about especially wearable technology, Ambiq is a go-to because they really understand low power. And when you combine that with AI, and you can have, like, say, a watch which does live translation and lasts for a day, kind of completely changes the world that we live in. Learn more about Ambiq solutions on our website, ipexchange.tech. And yeah, 2024 is going to be an interesting year. Keep designing.